Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Prosperity Through Multifamily Real Estate Investing podcast. As always, I'm your host, Cody Laughlin, and joining me, the one, the only, Mr. John Beatty. How you doing, John?
Fantastic. It's a great day. Coronavirus free, so we're happy, but we're praying for everyone out there that's going through this. So stay strong out there. Wash your hands.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, listen, guys, before we get started, if y'all don't mind, do us a favor, jump on iTunes, drop us a rating. We really appreciate your help getting the show out there. We're now streaming on iTunes and Spotify, so definitely check us out there, and we appreciate your feedback. So, well, John, I got to tell you, man, in the news, especially in today, again, with the coronavirus, all we hear is a lot of doom and gloom and a lot of negative outlooks for the next several months in all aspects of life right now. So, I got to tell you, man, I'm really excited about today's guest and our interview today, because I think he's going to bring some inspiration and a lot of positivity in a negative time right now. So, so that special guest is the best-selling author of the book Addicted to Life, Mr. Rob Rowsell. How you doing, Rob?
Hey, you pronounced my name correct. God bless you. I'm doing better now. That's great. Rob Rowsell. I'm doing great. How are you guys doing today?
Man, we're doing great. You're doing great. So we're about like what, John? I think 10 episodes in. So we got a lot of practice now. We're
It's good. It's pretty fluid now. And you just saw my wife and my little baby go through the background. This is the fun thing about podcasts at home.
It's a family show.
It's a family show. That's right.
Well, you'd be amazed how often I'm Mr. Roswell, because people just naturally switch those two letters. So that's why I was so impressed. Great job.
So full transparency, I had it spelt that way until right before the show. So I had to double check. So
Right on.
So
That's
cool,
good.
Rob. Well, hey, man, again, I want to thank you so much for being on the show, and, having an opportunity. I've met with you before the show a couple times. I'm just so inspired by your story. And so I'm looking forward just to getting right in. So if you don't mind, tell the listeners a little bit about yourself and your background, and we go from there.
Well, my background is in auto repair, but backing up a little bit, which was my day job. All of us had a day job at one point in time, right? And some of us still do. My wife and I own and operate auto repair shops in sunny San Diego, California. But backing up a little bit further from that, my wife and I were living on the streets homeless in 1999. I'm a recovered crystal meth crack cocaine addict. And my wife has never done a drink or a drug. She was addicted to Rob. And unfortunately, Rob drug her because of her faithfulness and addiction to me, and her ability to see in me what others couldn't at that time. I drug her through that lifestyle for quite a few years until I got my act together back in 1999. And I'm happy to announce that November of this year will be 20 years clean and sober.
Congratulations, man.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So when I tell my story, I talk about going from homeless to homeowner to multiple business owner to church board member to real estate investor to living the life of my dreams and wildest expectations and beyond. Because had I sat down, it's amazing to me how small and limited our finite human minds are. Because when I got sober, having the electricity bill in my name was like a big goal on my lists. But certainly even thinking bigger when I had a job and someone did put their faith in me, and I started working for somebody that turned out to be my mentor by example. For 5 years, I worked for him before I bought my first business, and he, by example, taught me how to run an ethical, honest auto repair shop. Before that all took place, if I sat down and wrote down my biggest dreams and goals as large as I could possibly think, I would have accomplished that literally a year into sobriety. A year into sobriety. Could never in a million years had someone told me that I'd be living the life that I live today with the relationships that I have with my kids and my wife. Certainly a strong financial base is great to have, but that isn't what we all know. That's not what it's all about. It's all about taking care of your loved ones and being able to live the life beyond your dreams, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, man, take us back to the beginning. I mean, living on the streets, like you said, homeless back in 1999. How did you find yourself in that situation? And then how did you dig yourself out of it?
That's a great question. And unless you've experienced the addiction at the level that most crackheads and crystal meth heads experience it. It's impossible to put into words. It was a slow descent with crystal. The moment I switched over to crack cocaine, it was a very, very fast spiraling downward effect to destruction. And people say, well, how did you do it? The honest answer, how'd you get clean and sober? I'm a coward. And I knew that the next step was, for when in the rooms of recovery, we talk about jails, institutions, and death. I knew I was going to prison for a long period of time, or my heart was going to explode, and there was no in between. And because I am a coward, I knew the other possibility was recovery. And I was sitting in my probation officer's office. Long story of how I got there. Unbelievable series of events that only could have been orchestrated by God Himself. Chapter 1 in my book talks about that, by the way. But I knew that. As I sat there with the blank application in front of me, because when you go in to check in for probation, adult probation in Tempe, Arizona, they give you a packet about this thick, and it asks you a bunch of questions. It wants to know your work history, your drug history, your family history, domestic violence history, all these questions. And I knew right then and there I was at a fork in the road. I was either going to continue to lie and try to put up this facade like I've always done that got me where I was at, or I was going to tell the truth and get transparent right down to the fact that the crack pipe was still warm in my pocket, and let's get transparent and maybe this lady can help me. And chapter 1 in my book is titled, You Have to Be Done. And until you're done living the way that you're living enough to the point where it's pain, the pain to remain the same is greater than the pain to go through some changes. And that's where I was in her probation office. And I decided to get transparent and fill out that application with honesty, and knowing that she could revoke my probation and put me in jail for the 2 years that they had set aside. So I was a little bit fearful there, but I knew right then and there was the time to either make a decision to change or remain the same and die.
So, Rob, we're going to steal that line from you, man. We're going to coin that line, man. It's a powerful line. I love it. So,
and Rob, for all the listeners, just remind them what the title of your book is so they can go out.
Sure. Addicted to Life, How I Went from Homeless to Extraordinary Success and Happiness in a Short Period of Time, Your 8-Step Formula for Success.
Awesome. We're going to dive into that 8-step formula here in just a minute, Rob. I want to get into those details for sure, but little teasers for the listeners. But I want to go back. You mentioned that at the time that you met your wife, who was not under the same circumstance but was addicted to you. How did that relationship form, and how did that come into play?
That's a great question. So the slow spiral had started because I was doing crystal at the time. I met my wife, and she was, I was still a functioning drug addict. I had a job. I was working as a service manager at a Chevron auto repair facility. It's a convenience store and a few-day auto repair shop. We've all seen those. And she pulled in one night with a broken belt on the way home from work. And we couldn't fix it that night, so I drove her home. And so the rest is kind of history there, right? Kind of a side note, I asked her on a date a couple days later, and she told me she would think about it. And 3 days later, she called me back and said that she would. She left me hanging there for a little bit, but she had no idea that I was a functioning addict at the time. Only when we had been dating for a couple months down the road, did I make the transition to crack, lost that job, lost that house. By then, she was hooked. And thank goodness, because, God put her in my life to save my life, and she did.
Wow. Amen, man. Amen. So walk us through, okay, you met your wife, you got this downward spiral, you found yourself on the streets, and then, like you said, you made a decision one day, okay, I'm not going to remain the same. I'm going to get out there and do something different. Walk us through that step from recovery to how you got introduced to real estate and your path to success.
Well, for those of us that have a few gray hairs, we remember the name Carlton Sheets. And when I got clean and sober, and I'm not referring to you guys, you may remember that name, but I certainly do. And a lot of the people I'm 53 years old, a lot of the people that are in that 50 to 60 range remember his infomercials on weekends, every weekend, 10 times a day on Saturdays and Sundays. And I was just now coming up didn't have any credit cards, and they wanted $500 for that. No money down, buy your first home or investment property kit, home study course is what it was. And I got in the mail one day from Experian an application for a secured credit card, which basically you send them $300, $500, $100, and they'll give you a credit card. It's the only way you could purchase that. And I knew the moment that I got that credit card application, I needed to save $500, send it to them. And that was like the big goal of my life after, because by then I had gotten that electricity bill in my name. I had gotten a phone bill in my name. I actually had a place I could call home. So now we were coming up, and our big goal was the Carlton Sheets No Money Down course. And I read that course cover to cover. I mean, I knew that course so well. If Carlton Sheets ever got sick, I could have taught that course. And I went into back then it was the newspapers, and you were chasing for sale by owners, and you were trying to negotiate terms with them. And at the time, as you'll read in my book, I didn't have as many teeth in my face as I had now back then. And I didn't have a driver's license, so I was driving around on a motorized Visa skateboard with a seat. I don't know if you remember what those look like, but pretty cool stuff. Up on my website, when you click on the photos pertaining to the book, there's a picture of a Visa motor scooter there. That's how I got to work. So I'm driving around to appointments with not all my teeth in my face, on a motorized skateboard with a seat, trying to get sellers to do deals with me with no money down. Okay, I don't know why. That it may have been that I didn't get any deals out of that first round, but that's really where I was at. And that's how I got introduced and got the bug for real estate. And although I did not get any deals at that time in my life, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that I would eventually be an investor in real estate, that some way, shape, or form, what strategy, what niche, didn't matter. I just knew that I wanted to do real estate. When we moved into, I was working at an auto repair shop, as I said before, a mentor of mine that was mentoring me by his example, found out from my father who lived in California. I was living in Phoenix, Arizona area. An associate of my father had an auto repair shop. His exit strategy was one of his 5 sons was going to take over his shop. One by one, they all waved the white flag and said, we're not interested in that business. And he was telling my dad about it. And I told my dad, tell your friend that your son does this and he'd be interested. Well, 3 years later, I got a phone call from my dad, and my dad said, he's ready. And my response, no word of a lie, was, who's ready? What are you talking about? I had no idea what he was talking about. He said, Sterling's ready to sell the auto repair shop. And we came over to California, spent a few days at the auto repair shop. We purchased that. We ended up working a deal. That was a no money down deal. Those details I learned from that Carlton Sheets course had me buy my 2 first auto repair shops, no money down. And all the details of that is in my book. So for those of you that wonder how all that works, and we're all doing it in single family space. I did it in the auto repair shop space. And once we started doing good in the auto repair business, we knew we wanted to be good stewards of the Lord's money. So we knew education was the key, and we started searching out education for real estate. I got a book by Robert Kiyosaki. The title caught me because I've always been a self-help guy, a personal development guy, if you will. And I found a book called Retire Young, Retire Rich. Flat out changed my life. I had no idea that it was one in a series, and it wasn't number 1. You're supposed to read Rich Dad, Poor Dad first. I didn't know that, man. I broke the rules. And I picked Retire Young, Retire Rich, and it was awesome. And so I did a little research and found out that Robert Kiyosaki had a real estate class for free here in San Diego. I went to that class. I knew nothing was for free. So I invited my wife because I knew they were going to want some cash. And we sat in the front of that room because I wanted to get my money's worth. It was free, right? And they said at any time, no pressure, no high pressure sales. They said at any time, we've got this 3-day course, boot camp, for $500. And if you want to go, it's available at the back table. Well, my wife disappeared. What I thought to go to the ladies' room, and she came back with a book bag full of all their materials. She signed us up, and that was the best $500 I've ever spent on education and real estate, quite honestly, with all we learned. But naturally, as we thought, there was a $8,000 to $40,000 package on the other end of that. We bought in at about a $27,000 level. I won't sugarcoat that. No good education is cheap. We all know that, right? Mm-hmm. So I paid the price, and because it was so expensive, man, we chewed up that education like there was no tomorrow. And 2 years later, in 2009, we were inducted into that school's Hall of Fame.
That's incredible, man. That's awesome.
Yeah. That's a long answer. I'm sorry to be so long-winded.
No, it's perfect. No, it's perfect.
And just to be clear, Rob, this was the Robert Kiyosaki system?
That was Wealth Intelligence Academy was the name at the time. And Robert Kiyosaki was at the time the face of that education company. I think he still may be. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yep.
So going back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I'm very sorry. At the Hall of Fame induction ceremony in Orlando, Florida, there was a guy on the stage, one of the presenters. His name was Dave Lindahl from RE Mentor. And we signed up with Dave's class that weekend that we were inducted into that Hall of Fame. And so that was 2009. Been a student in multifamily space since 2009. Have partnered up with students all along the way. And back then, it wasn't just all about multifamily. Remember, real estate was a dirty word. And it won't surprise me at the other end of the coronavirus that for a short period, real estate may just be a dirty word once again. We'll all see how this all plays. We don't know. But it was at the end of the recession, that real estate was a dirty word. And we were taught to set for every 3 or 4 homes you flip. We were flipping back then. So every 3rd or 4th home, you should be able to pay cash from your profits from the first 2 or 3. So we did a lot of that. So every 3rd or 4th home, our goal was to keep that next one as a rental. And then Dave taught us 4 plexes, 6 plexes, 12 plexes, and we did a lot of that and held on to those and rode the appreciation train here in San Diego on up since then.
Wow. I want to go back and highlight what you said, a little bit ago, Rob, and you made the decision to invest in yourself and your education. Expand on that a little bit and the importance of making that investment on yourself.
Yeah, that's huge, man. And it's, again, I mentioned the amount that we paid for the Kiyosaki education. We paid about the same for the RE Mentor education. But, if you're not in, we talk about it in the rooms of recovery for the people that are 12-step minded that might hear this message. It's all the same. My sponsor, and that's what we call it in recovery, is a sponsor, which is basically your mentor, because they've walked the minefield that you need to walk. So why not get it, then to hold your hand and walk you through it to save you some aggravation and some pain, right? No different than the education we get in real estate, right? Same idea. But my sponsor would say, Rob, either you're growing or you're dying. One of the two. Either you're going forward or you're going backward. There's nothing good that you want in life that's going to allow you to coast to get it. In other words, you're not going to coast to get anything worthwhile. It's going to be something that you're working towards, that you're stretching, that's testing you, that makes you feel from time to time like it's a waste of your time because you're working so hard and you're not seeing the benefits of that work. But if you just keep doing it, if you just go on faith, you will be amazed at what you accomplish. And that was in the recovery world. I've just turned and applied that to my business life, my family life, my marital life, my role in my missions work, all the areas that I set goals in. That's my philosophy.
That sounds exactly like the second law of thermodynamics. Everything tends toward disorder unless acted upon by an outside force.
I love that. I hadn't heard that. That's good. Yes,
check it out.
Absolutely. That's good stuff. So yeah, it's. I won't say that I'm the best at it. I'm not the greatest reader, for me to read a book in the beginning was like pure torture. We're well beyond that point, but my goal is to do a book a month. The challenge is a lot of the books that we read in personal development, they're not necessarily entertainment reads, I'll call them. My wife does a lot of reading, And it amazes me how much she reads. Well, I figured it out. A little bit of a different deal. She's reading for entertainment purposes, like you and I might watch a movie. But the books I read they're painful because there's a lot to. I call them painful. They're work because there's a lot to take out of them. And if I just buzz through them, I get 5%. If I take my time through them, it might be 2 months for one book. Some of those books have so many good points in them.
And that's a great tip for the listeners, as you're going through your self-learning, self-development, just take it one step at a time. You don't have to do it all in one day. And because you're right, there's so much out there, but you just got to put one foot in front of the other. So,
yeah, we've got so many platforms and avenues that education comes from nowadays. It's almost difficult to get a handle on I've got a prioritization step by step on my board 1 through 12 of what I should be doing first, because otherwise it just all gets diluted, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's easy to become scatterbrained because you see about 1,001 different options. So
totally.
You've got to pick one, or at least talk to somebody that can direct you in the right direction first before you try to consume all 1,000.
That's a great use of a coach. Because
I 100% agree.
Yeah, chapter 8 of my book is You Won't Do It Alone, and it really goes deep into the importance of a coach. Yeah. I'm taking a pause because I've been gabbing, man. Sorry.
I'm waiting on John. I think John had a question for you.
Oh, no, I wanted to expand on the coaching just a little bit more, Rob. Tell me about your coach. What's the interaction like? Exactly how are they shaping you? Iron sharpens iron. So as one man sharpens the other, right? So how is this process being transformed over time as you're engaging with them?
I do something called it's called Big Rocks, quarterly action plan and Big Rocks. So quarterly action plan, it amazes me, and Tony Robbins pointed this out to me. It amazes me to how much people will overestimate what can be done in a year and underestimate what can be done in 5 years. So certainly we should all have 1, 3, and 5 year goals, no question about it. But we should also break that down into quarterly action plans. So, and the tough thing is, again, overestimate, underestimate. My thing is 3. I choose 3 things each quarter that I should be working on. Those are things that are, what Stephen Covey refers to in quadrant 2 items, things that are important but not urgent, so they're easily to put aside. But if we put them on a quarterly action plan, and now each one of those 3 might have 20 things that need to get done to accomplish them, those are your weekly Big Rocks. So you choose 3 to 5, depending on how low of hanging fruit they are, 3 to 5 Big Rocks each week over a quarter knocks out those 3 big ticket items that for most of us would never get done because they are quadrant 2 items, right? I don't think never. They just take a lot longer to get done if we don't actually specifically put them on a plan. My coach keeps me accountable. I have to send my coach my Big Rocks, weekly Big Rocks. And part of that weekly Big Rocks that he gives me is not just the Big Rocks that I'm supposed to do. It's also victories for last week. It's also biggest victories or biggest victory, biggest challenges I'm currently experiencing, and how I did with last week's Big Rocks and what my Big Rocks are for this week.
That's great. So you still got a coach then?
Oh, you bet.
Fantastic. Okay, so you are 100% in the coaching realm, not just, hey, I had a coach. And so listeners, just remember this. You're never too old to have a coach. You never have enough experience to not have a coach.
Right. That's good. And, I've had a coach in a lot of areas because in a few different spaces, one of them being auto repair. So auto repair has its own coaching. Real estate has its own coaching. Non-specific business has its own coaching, which is what I'm currently in. I'm involved in auto repair and non-industry specific coaching right now. But the reason why my book got completed was a book coach, right? Public speaking has its own little arena. Also, you want to get better at that. I would highly encourage Toastmasters to anybody, which is just another form of coaching. But even deeper than that, I did have a coach for that as well at one time.
There you have it, folks. Coach. It's worth it. You remember, you pay $50,000 a year for college, and then you stop at age 22. How are you investing in yourself after that?
Good. That's good.
Amen.
Buy a book or two, but you might want to throw a coach in there after some well thought out research.
Yeah. So the coaching that went with, I'll just piggyback on that with just one thing. The $27,000 I spent with Robert Kiyosaki, my first wholesale deal, I got the call. They always told me, guys, that I was going to get this call. And it was the gal who told me she had flown in. She's here for 5 days to take care of her mother's affairs. She lives in Minnesota. She doesn't want to stay here. And this little ding, ding, ding went off in my head. And I was on my way to that house within 5 minutes to talk to her. And the first thing she said when I walked in was, "Don't even think I'm going to sign a contract with you right now. That's not going to happen. I'm just looking for information." I left there with a signed contract, and I wholesaled that deal for 20 grand.
Wow.
That was my first one. So needless to say that the money you spend on coaching will come back to you 100-fold. I think we lost you.
Yeah. Sorry about that. I was on mute. The transaction volumes you deal with in real estate are large, even if it's a single family house. So remember, the ROI of 10 or 20 grand over the long run, if you consistently apply this knowledge, is certainly tenfold.
Right. Yeah.
So Rob, let's piece this together. So I want you to get to brag a little bit on your success and where you made it. And then I want to get into your 8 successes that you list in your book. Okay. So you went from living on the streets in 99, you joined it, you met your wife, you joined Robert Kiyosaki's training program. You start developing your real estate business. You meet, you continue your investing. You get inducted to the Hall of Fame 2009. You join Dave Lindahl's program. What's next? Fast forward to what have you done to this point, and talk to us about where you're at today.
Ooh, that's a lot to cover in a few minutes, isn't it? Wow. Good memory, though. Good memory. So we were just inducted into Dave's Hall of Fame in 2018, my wife and I, because of the stuff we've done in the multifamily space. But as I mentioned earlier, he called it the chunker strategy back then, which is what I described a moment ago, just his nickname, because you're getting chunks of cash when you're doing flips and wholesale deals, where you're ending up with the 3rd or 4th or 5th house paying cash and then go back to hard money for a while, and paying cash and go back to hard money for a while. So we invested in some other people's deals. We sponsored some deals, and we were involved in multifamily a little bit from 09 till 17. But all those properties that we had 3rd or 4th one kept, the equity in those, we started looking at our portfolio and with a mentor, with a coach. And the coach said, "You know what? You're doing pretty good here. Your return on your cash on cash return is looking good, but your return on equity is absolute dog doo. You really need to evaluate this. Look at the equity. Now look at the annual income on this property and look at the equity. And if you divide that by the equity, it's 0.0001%. It doesn't make any sense. It's time to start rebalancing your portfolio." So what we started doing was looking at that and 1031ing some of those properties into multifamily in other states. And as an example, California type equity, a 4-plex and a 12-plex, we 1031 into a 70-plex and a 96-plex. And that's just one transaction. That's just the things that we started doing based in all honesty, I knew it was time to start get active in that space again. So we jumped back on board with Dave Lindahl, bought another years of coaching and got the same coach I had back in 2009, walked me through the steps again. Great refresher, great money spent. The money I spent on that education, again, it's one transaction back. It doesn't take very long to receive that back. And really got me back around the students that are some new and some that were old friends, and we started doing deals together. And as I mentioned to you, Cody, our last deal was 253 units, a 2-property deal in Texarkana, Texas, 60 units and 193 units that we just closed, and 104 units on another deal in Brownville with some other students.
Oh, wow. That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
I wanted to point that out because I really want the listeners to really understand that you are your own barrier to your success, right? I mean, coming from your background and where you started to where you are now, twice inductee into Investment Hall of Fame, you've built a real estate business that you're thriving off of, you're doing full time. And now, here you are serving as mentors to people like John and I and our listeners. So it's such a phenomenal and inspirational story, and it couldn't come at a better time, again, where we're at today's time. But I just really want the listeners, I really hope that they take away that from this interview is, you have to make that decision for yourself, and then you have to act, right? And you have to believe in yourself that, you can be better. So, so I appreciate you sharing your story for sure.
Yeah, and I do want to make one thing perfectly clear. I don't get hung up on trophies or Hall of Fame inductions. I'll be honest with you. All that really means to me is we got recognized that we're actually doing something with the education as compared to some people that didn't do as much with it. That's all it really means to me. I really keep that in perspective because we're pretty humble people.
Fair enough. So cool, man. Well, listen, let's dive into your book. I want to learn about these 8 keys to success that you highlight in your book. Okay. And just give us a brief breakdown of those 8 steps, if you don't mind.
Well, you're going to test me. I got to remember all 8 of them in one sitting. Holy moly.
Pull your book out.
Yeah.
I could cheat, but let's see. Number 1, you got to be done. You absolutely 100% got to be done until you confess to yourself and the world that you're done. You won't be ready for number 2, because number 2 is you got to get uncomfortable and take action, right? We all have to we talked about this a little bit already. Nothing that we want that's worthwhile in life will we coast downhill to get. We will work our tails off harder than we ever did before, and at points wonder if it's going to be worth it as we go through that battle, right? So you got to get uncomfortable and take action, right? You got to prepare now for what's coming. In other words, there's a lot of people, and I'll put this in perspective with what's going on in the times right now with the coronavirus, in this shutdown of our world, a lot of our world. I'm auto repair shop owner. We'll make it through this, SBA help or no SBA help, because we're prepared for this. Does that make sense? Real estate investors that have prepared for what's coming. Well, now what I'm talking about in the book is, when my phone rang and my father said he's ready to sell that first auto repair shop, I had been working, and my book goes through all these details. I've been working on my credit. I've been working on my education. So they asked for a credit report. There was a no money down deal that was owner financed to buy the auto repair shop, but they wanted to know who they were going into business with. And we had prepared ourselves for the negotiation. I had prepared with that Carlton Sheets home study course on how to negotiate no money down deals and I was clueless to how all that worked until I went through that course. So you got to prepare now for what's coming, and you got to be prepared for the unexpected, which was chapter number 4. You never know when that phone's going to ring from a resume that you put in 2 years ago and forgot all about, and that phone rings. You got to be prepared for the unexpected, right? We all need to be prepared. Chapter 5 is, I don't know if it's chapter 5, but I know it's a very important chapter, and that is you got to understand the law of exposure. That's actually chapter 7. You've got to understand. So what that means, the law of exposure says, what I expose myself to, I shall become. Whether that's good, whether that's bad. In my book, I talk about what do you think everybody in Boston talks the car in the Harvard Yard, right? Why do you think the people in Texas say y'all? Why do you think most kids grow up in similar fields as their parents, right? It's because we become what we expose ourselves to. So if we're listening to raunchy talk radio on the way to work and on the way home from work every day, we become that, right? It doesn't take me long. And I came from Boston. I grew up in Arlington as a kid. And you don't hear that, but all I have to do is be in Boston for about 20 minutes, and I'm parking the car in the Harvard Yard right there with them. Right? Doesn't take very long, But I have to monitor R-rated movies, heck, PG movies nowadays, because if I leave there after all that vulgar language, I go back to old habits real easy. And my wife calls me on it. I hate it when she calls me on it. So I just have to avoid it, because the law of exposure says good, bad, or otherwise. And this is why we read books. Many of my mentors I've never met. They've mentored me through their books, right? Because I got around them whenever I could, whether it's Joel Osteen and The Purpose-Driven Life. Can't think of the author right this moment, but I will. Good stuff
Rick.
to expose myself to for change, positive change in my world, right? Got to be done. You got to get uncomfortable and take action. You got to prepare now for what's coming. You got to be prepared for the unexpected. Law of exposure. Chapter 8 is, I can't believe I can't remember the 8 chapters of my book right now. You guys have put me on the spot. I might have to grab a book. But that's okay. As a matter of fact, let's do that.
Rick Warren is who you were talking about, Purpose-Driven
It
Life.
is Rick Warren. Thank you
Yep.
for the reminder. I'm drawing a blank here because I'm being put on the spot. But you won't always feel like you're winning is chapter number 6. And in chapter number 6, I talk about dragging my wife through that lifestyle that I described to you, the homeless drug addiction lifestyle. We had issues in our marriage that had never been talked about, never been resolved. And those problems don't go away, right? So in sobriety, as a business owner, those problems came out. And my business, my first auto repair business, is literally exploding, way better than we ever thought or projected it was going to do. Meanwhile, I had a winter time going on in my marriage that reflected into my whole life. So the purpose of that chapter talks a lot about the troubles in my marriage, what we did to fix those, but you won't always feel like you're winning regardless of what battle that you're battling is the point of that chapter. Very important that people understand that. No matter how well you've got summer times going on in other areas of your life, you're likely to have a winter time that can affect that and make it feel like, hey, am I ever going to get through this, right?
Did you have a coach for that time in your marriage life?
I had our marriage mentors. Absolutely, we had a small group in our church, and I actually named Mike and Jamie Petricelli, who are marriage mentors from back then, and we spent a couple of years in their home group every Wednesday night, and along with some other things that we did, but it's all in the book, step by step. Yeah, cool stuff. So yes, we did. Yes, we did. And I think I've covered them all, actually. Great. Law of exposure, won't do it alone. Oh, most important one. And it's early on in the book, chapter 3. Once you get uncomfortable and take action, you've got chapter number 3 is you must ride your wave of momentum. Once you get things rolling and get things off the ground, you can't let off the throttle. You've got to keep it going. You've got to continue to build success upon success upon success.
So don't take a rest and let for a couple of weeks, and that tide ebbs and you've got to pick it back up from scratch. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Right. It's kind of like going to the gym.
Yep.
If we only go once in a while, we'll get mediocre results at best, right? If we want good results, noticeable results, we're going to be pretty consistent, right?
Absolutely.
Good analogy, John. Yes.
Well, I tell you what, Rob, I can't wait for my book to get here in the mail and go through that, man. I think, the value that you've offered just in these brief highlights it's incredible. And I can't wait for the listeners. I'm hoping that they order one as well, because, you could just hear your passion. You can hear your success. And just, again, I'm so motivated, inspired by just listening to, you sharing those tips. So I can't wait, man. I'm excited.
And everyone, that's called Addicted to Life, How I Went from Homeless to Extraordinary Success and Happiness in a Short Period of Time, your 8-step formula for achievement. So check it out. Cody and I are going to check it out, and we look forward to it.
Love it. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Rob, man, we're getting near the end of our time here, and this has been such a phenomenal interview, man, and I'm looking forward just to learning more about you and staying connected with you, and again, reading your book. But before you go, we got a couple more questions before we wrap up. Is that okay?
Sure.
Awesome. So listen, tell us a little bit about, some of the things that you do for your continued education to further your investing career.
Well, it's a lot easier now than it used to be. Podcasts are a big deal. I love podcasts. There's a lot of them. You guys are very familiar. I listen to your guys as well. Jake and Gino, love Jake and Gino stuff on podcasts. I listen to Rod Cleef. I listen to Adam Adams. I listen to Ari Mentor stuff as well, because I can do it at my convenience, and I can do it on Bluetooth it across my speakers driving down the road. It's just easy. I do it with my headphones on when I'm working out. And remember, we talked about the law of exposure, chapter 7. You are what you hang around. It's amazing to me how quickly, when I'm outside of that arena, the real estate space in my head, how my mind gets off track. When I'm just listening to students ask questions, I'm a guest like I'm doing for you right now, sharing a little bit of story, I grab one or two things. But most importantly, if I don't grab a thing, it keeps my head in the game, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Powerful. It's powerful.
Absolutely. You have to submerge yourself in, like you said, that environment to gain, like you said, ride that momentum, right? You don't want to let yourself veer off, because it's very easy to do.
It's very easy to do. And it's very easy, I'll never forget this, because it's pretty good reminder, is I remember this is the way the story came to me. As a famous golfer at the end of his career was asked by a reporter, what is the toughest golf course you ever played? And without much hesitation, he said, son, the toughest golf course I've ever played was right between my ears, about 8 inches, right? Because we all are our own worst enemies with our self-talk from time to time. And by being around you guys, and these podcasts and videos and everything else that keeps us plugged in, I stay in the game and get rid of that thief in our mind that isn't just after our purse, it's after our promise.
Love it.
Powerful.
Powerful.
It's powerful.
Absolutely. So tell us who's been the biggest inspiration for you in your success?
There's been a lot of them. If you talk about real estate, Dave Lindahl has been a great inspiration to me. Dave, and I talk about Dave in my book. He's mentioned in my book as well when we start talking about the law of exposure. Watching Dave from the stage share about running the Boston Marathon, I had never run in my life. The only thing I had run from was the police, quite frankly. And, after seeing him talk about the Boston Marathon, it made me believe that I could run half marathons. I started doing that, and I run 2 or 3 half marathons a year because of that. I owned 1 auto repair shop when I signed on with him. We have 4 auto repair shops now. I wasn't doing anything except house flipping back then. I learned I could do real estate in California. I didn't have to go to Arizona where it was less expensive. I mean, he's inspired me in a lot of different ways, but I've also had one of my pastor friends, Pastor Rick Aller and Pastor Greg Rodell, inspired me on my spiritual side, because for those of you that haven't already caught on, you don't get out of the depths of addiction that I was without a higher power. We call it in the rooms of recovery. For me, that happens to be Jesus Christ. And I've needed a lot of mentorship in that area. And those 2 pastors have really helped me in that area a lot. Yeah.
Excellent. So what advice would you give to the listeners to help them grow their businesses?
Take action. Do something. Take action. If you're not your monthly RIA, Real Estate Investment Club, every single month, then you're just playing around, because that's easy. It's $20 and it's a couple hours. And even if it's an hour drive, it's easy. Find your local RIA, go to reia.com, and then find the local branch in your area. Nowadays, that was my advice back then. Nowadays, you guys well know, a meetup is just as good, and there's a lot of those around. I know you guys run a very successful one. Meetups are your local RIA. What's the reason for not going to a meetup other than I'm too tired, my dreams aren't big enough? What? Did I just say that? That's really what it comes down to. If the dream is big enough, you just got to take action. That is take action. Find the podcasts I just mentioned. Take action. Find some education online. Take action. Find a mentor. Take action. Go to a webinar. Not a webinar. Excuse me. Well, when the coronavirus is over, go to a seminar. Go to your RIA. Start plugging into the education. Get around the people.
I'll actually
go ahead.
I was just going to say, even with coronavirus, there's no excuse because we're doing online stuff all day, every day.
Virtual.
There's a virtual webinar. There's a webinar almost every day on real estate. That's a virtual meetup. So there is kind of no excuse.
Totally. You just got to take action. You got to break, get uncomfortable. Chapter 2, get uncomfortable and take action, right? I'm done. Chapter 1, get uncomfortable, take action. Number 2, ride the wave of momentum. Number 3, it's all there. It's a real basic stuff for us, and it really, for anybody, it's common sense. You just need to do something. And it's amazing the fear that we all have, because we all have the fear, right, in the beginning of anything, that level of uncomfortableness, if that's a word, right? We're uncomfortable, so it makes us afraid. If we take action, fear goes away.
Awesome. All right, Rob, tell the listeners how they can get a hold of you or connected with you and learn more about you.
Well, I'm not even sure if they're going to want to reach out to me. I've gabbed their ear off all this time, man. I couldn't remember the chapter to my own book. They're not going to want to call me. No, I'm just kidding.
They need to get your book.
Yeah, right.
Right. So addictedtolifebook.com or Rob Rowsell, ROWSELL.com. But they both go to the same place. You can purchase a copy of my book and learn a lot more about what it is that we're doing, as well as, that's good. That's good. A lot of information up there.
Hey, Rob.
Thank you so much. We're honored to have you today. So it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Ditto, man. I'm humbled that you guys would even invite me, and I appreciate you letting me ramble on. Thank you very much, guys. Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you, Rob, man. It's been such a joy, and we look forward to airing this episode, and hopefully the listeners will be just as inspired as we are. So take care, man. Congratulations on your sobriety and your success, and definitely look forward to staying connected with you, man.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much.